Chapter 13. Refuge.
Anathayan, you scared the shit out of me.
Pris bursts out as she enters the Len's home. Without waiting for the others, she slams herself on a wide patchwork couch, leaning back wearily, her eyes reddened by exhaustion.
And that's saying something. After what you put us through.
Saren snorts, greeting the Len with a wave.
Thanks for letting us in. I needed that.
She grunts as Taryn leads her to the couch. The Len stows away the shotgun behind the front door and glances at Saren's leg. Her freckled round face shows the signs of a life under a burning sun.
Gunshot?
The old Len asks expertly as she moves toward the back. Her movements are slow but determined.
Yeah, right in the calf, but it went through.
Saren mumbles as she rests back against the cushions, grateful for the comfortable couch. She closes her eyes. Meanwhile, Raylan, Arya, and Everin stand around and survey the room, too tired to move. The wooden wall panels emanate the dryness of decades of hot weather. Next to the couch, armchairs sit around a low coffee table. In the back, bookshelves and wooden boxes are set under a stairway leading up. An open door beside it leads to the kitchen. A floorboard creaks as Arya steps forward.
Hi, I'm Arya.
She says.
Thanks for helping us.
She waves at Anathayan but blushes and breaks eye contact, surprised by the hypnotizing gaze of the Len's blue piercing eyes. They seem to gaze right into her mind.
Yes, your help is most welcome.
Raylan chimes in. Anathayan turns to Raylan and looks him up and down.
You're smaller in real life.
She states dryly.
Yes, I've seen you on the news.
She tells them.
They're looking for you, really hard.
She beams and waves them closer, obviously not afraid to hide federal fugitives. Her brown garment ripples with her inviting wave.
Come on in, have a seat.
She says, pointing at the couches.
Don't just stand there. And you, at the door?
She waves at Everin, who still stands alone at the front door, ready to back out in an instant. Even in her exhausted state, flight is always an option.
Join your friends. Don't be shy.
Anathayan chats on while she enters the kitchen.
You must be starved. I'll heat some leftover stew and we have fresh rye bread. Oh wait, it's barley bread. Where are the eggs? Ah, there they are.
Muffled sounds of cupboards opening and closing, the rustle of clothes and clanging of pans sound from the kitchen as Anathayan rummages in her supplies. The hearty aroma of cured meat and herbs spreads into the living room.
The stew will be ready soon.
She calls out from the kitchen.
And tomorrow, I'll make you some nice scrambled eggs.
The old Len returns from the kitchen carrying a water jug.
Here, fresh water, right out of the well. And later, I'll show you to your beds. You can...
She pauses, looking around the room. Saren and Taryn sleep side by side. Pris's head hangs to her side, her ama muscle rising and sinking evenly in her sleep. On the other couch, like a string of closed-eyed puppets, Raylan, Arya, and Everin lean against each other, fast asleep after the exhaustive night.
Or I could wait until you wake up.
She whispers, quietly setting down the water jug. Looking at their young, innocent faces, she sighs, returning to the kitchen to turn off the stove, or whatever they have done. And the news was not clear on that at all. They do not deserve to be hunted like this. She throws one last glance into the living room.
It's not fair.
Anathayan muses as she slowly climbs the stairs to her room.
But then, what is?
The smell of fried eggs and grease swirls in the air as Arya slowly opens her eyes. A bright sun pierces her eyes and her pulsating headache keeps her from making any sudden moves. She squints and feels her dry tongue. Next to her, Everin is still sleeping. On the other side, Raylan's head rests against her hip, his legs curled up against his chest. Arya yawns and gently puts Raylan's head down on the cushion while she gets up. A sizzling noise gains her attention and she looks over to the kitchen. In the backlight, she spots Anathayan scraping steaming scrambled eggs out of a cooking pan while stretching her back. She looks over to Pris, Saren, and Taryn. They are still sleeping. Slowly, she ambles over to the kitchen, noting the decorations and pictures on the wall. The Trinity religious symbol, a triangle within a square within a circle, is present as a beautifully ornamented wooden inlay above the stone fireplace. Dried flowery herbs hang from the walls. The carpets over the wooden floor are worn and faded after decades of use. Arya traces the book titles, feeling the leather covers with her fingers. The books have seen a lot of use.
Good morning, sunshine.
The old Len greets her.
Bathroom is to your right.
She adds.
Thanks.
Arya murmurs, slipping into the bathroom. Random scenes pass through her mind: the serene library, Evren's confession, the dinner, the chaos of their escape.
Yesterday marked the last day of my normal life.
She laments to herself, reflecting on the uncontrollable events that led her to this old farm.
And I don't like my new life at all.
She adds, taking the splash of cold water to her face as punishment for her predicament. The cold shock lets her breathe deeply, but it also pushes back her gloomy thoughts. The clouded bathroom mirror shows her exhausted face, and weary eyes stare back at her.
My parents,
She thinks in shock.
they must be horrified about the news. Her daughter? A terrorist? I hope Len Mom can figure out for herself what nonsense this is.
Hearing Pris's voice outside, she quickly dries her face, checking her appearance in the mirror. With a determined swing, she opens the door.
Real good stuff.
Pris mumbles with a full mouth, quenching the hot food with water.
Get your paws out of my scrambled eggs, you truffle pig.
Anathian chastises Pris.
Go, wash your hands.
She orders, shaking her head playfully. Brushing her gray hair aside, she grins at Arya.
Unbelievable, these young folk.
Arya steps aside to let Pris pass and instinctively looks down. Pris frowns at Arya but stays quiet.
Be a dear and fetch the plates, will ye?
Anathian tells Arya, pointing to a shelf in the kitchen.
Be glad to.
Arya replies and picks up the thick clay plates. Returning to the living room, she finds the rest of her friends slowly coming to life. Raylan sits on the couch, head in his hands while Evren gently strokes his back. Taryn watches Siren, who gently feels her calf, wrapped in fresh white bandage. As pitiful as they look to anyone, Arya feels righteous confidence in her friends. She puts down the plates with the feeling that their insurmountable task to stop the world from dying seems not so impossible anymore. Pris exits the bathroom and ambles back to the living room with folded arms, deep in thought. She gazes out of the window to check on her car sitting in the morning sun, a reminder that last night really happened. Chewed-up corn stalks hang on the grill, bullet holes on the hood, a busted window. Pris's heart skips a beat at the damage her beloved car took.
Just hold up a little bit longer.
She pleads more to herself than to the car.
I'll fix you right up, don't you worry.
She glances over to Evren, who quietly comforts Raylan. Pris desperately wants to talk to Evren, but again, the time is not right. Watching Raylan's defeated pose, she muses.
Wouldn't want to be in his shoes. All these wasted years. He really must hate his father.
Looking on as Arya lays the table, Pris recalls that she has not even told Anathian what this is really all about, and what their failure will entail for their world. She turns around and strides determinedly into the kitchen, closing the door behind her. As Siren and Taryn exit the bathroom, Siren gingerly walks by herself back to the living room.
These biobots are awesome.
She grunts and sits down at the table. Taryn claps Siren's back and jokes.
I'm just glad I took the right box from the first aid kit.
Arya joins them at the table and tells them,
Yeah, I've heard about those bots. It's an elegant solution. Their energy runs out eventually and they can't replicate. Expensive, though. I wonder where Pris got them?
She looks over to the closed kitchen door.
You can get anything on the black market if you have the cash.
Siren says, shrugging her shoulders.
That's her point. Is Pris rich?
Taryn explains Arya's argument. Siren frowns that she fell for a logic trap, but Arya solves the mystery with a sudden insight.
Of course. Jepedia. The access keys.
She exclaims.
Say what?
Arya's words are incomprehensible to Siren.
Jepedia gave Evren access keys to a bank account. She must have done the same for Pris.
Surprised, Siren looks at Taryn and muses.
The more I know of this tinkerer, the more I like her.
You better not talk like that around Evren.
Arya growls in a serious voice.
Show some respect to that Amma. We wouldn't be here without her.
Okay.
Siren lifts her hands up in peace.
It's just my blabbermouth.
She apologizes and adds sincerely.
I do respect her.
Raylan sits down at the table and smiles weakly at his triple partners.
Hey, all good?
No.
Saren pouts and holds her stomach. Taking a deep breath through her nose, she smells the scrambled eggs and moans.
I'm hungry.
What's Pris doing in there?
Taryn wants to know. Raylan sighs, turning his gaze to the door.
I imagine she gives her first cousin, once removed, a rundown of why we are here.
The energizing smell of strong tikra blends in with the mix of scrambled eggs, grease, and toasted bread as Anathian opens the kitchen door. Her pale face and open mouth confirm Raylan's assumption. Pris told her. Clearing her throat, she hands Pris's steaming pot with tikra and braces herself against the door.
You go on now, past the tikra.
She mutters.
I'll be right behind you.
Evren exits the bathroom and Anathian turns to her, nervously patting Evren's arm.
Good, good.
She smiles distantly.
The platter with the scrambled eggs is right there. Be careful, it's hot. I'll get the...
Her voice trails off as her eyes dart to Pris.
Yes, I'll get the bread.
She finishes, waiting for Evren to take out the big steaming clay platter. Lost in thought, Anathian stares at the woven bread tray. Her hands start to shake and she clasps them together, wringing them intently. Finally, she exhales deeply and loads the tray with toasted barley bread. The others are all seated and cherish the strong tikra that revives their exhausted minds. The old Lin slowly walks toward the table, the bread tray shaking slightly as she sets it down. With a serious expression on her face, she sits down and looks around the table with her intense blue eyes. They all feel scrutinized, like passing a test with unknown questions. Anathian grunts as she reaches for the scrambled eggs and remarks dryly,
Scrambled eggs for scrambled brains. How fitting.
Taking her fork, she looks at it in thought, slowly shaking her head.
I still don't really get it.
She says,
Eliminating your own race to survive a bit longer.
I know. We all had to wrap our heads around it.
Raylan replies. Anathian observes his demeanor, sensing his leadership role in this group of misfits.
Eat, eat.
She urges them and digs in herself, glancing around to get a feel for the people around her.
So, how's your leg?
Anathian asks of Saren.
Much better, thanks for the new bandage.
Saren responds, nodding with gratitude at the old Lin. Anathian acknowledges with a full mouth.
This is really good.
Arya says, lifting up her bread.
You need plenty of eggs and a good yeast.
Anathian says, pointing her fork at the woven bread tray.
It's not as good as rye, but nothing else grows down here.
She shrugs and dives into her scrambled eggs again as she runs out of harmless small talk. They eat in silence for a while, unsure how to approach the obvious. Anathian finishes her meal first and gazes at the empty egg platter, lost in thought. Playing with the last bit of bread on her plate, she looks around the table and clears her throat.
Is there no other way?
She asks. Raylan understands what Anathian is asking, but slowly shakes his head, avoiding her direct gaze. He speaks for them all.
Who should we call? The local cops that chase us? The federal government that puts us on top of its most wanted list?
Frustrated, he throws his fork on the plate and leans back.
We can't go public,
he says.
Would you believe a wanted ecos terrorist who tells you that the industry wants to blow up our only chance of survival? How crazy is that?
He asks exaggeratedly, throwing his hands in the air.
No one will believe us.
He finishes disgruntledly, folding his arms across his chest.
I do.
Anathian quietly replies.
Yes, some others do too, but
Pris is interrupted by Evren's shout.
Gepedia!
Evren grabs her arm clip and checks for any new messages. Nothing.
Who is Gepedia?
Anathian asks, hoping to find an ally for their cause. Judging by the response of the others, she may be onto something.
Of course.
Arya exclaims, snapping her fingers. They could talk to Gepedia with Anathian's arm clip. She glances at the old Len, trying to judge her character. Raylan unfolds his arms slowly, also realizing that Anathian could be very helpful. Cautiously glancing at the old Len, he pushes his plate onto the table and smiles at Saren and Taryn. He rests his hands on the table, interlocking his fingers. After a moment's silence, he fixes Anathian's eyes with his.
Gepedia is a good friend of ours. She sent Pris to help us escape. She sent us messages. but the federal AIs are just waiting for us to answer. But if someone else would,
Pris cuts in to support Raylan's plan.
You should see what this AMA can do.
She says,
I can't show you now, but my account numbers are off the charts. That's some real wild stuff.
she boasts. The old Len fixes Pris with hard blue eyes.
I survived a long time in Dushama without giving in to the greed of the city.
She tells Pris, who feels uneasy under Anathian's determined gaze. She turns to scowl at Raylan.
And I'm not going to start now. You cannot buy me.
Wait, Anna, hear me out.
Pris demands.
We're not buying you. We can't.
She recalls the hustle with her black market associates, setting up a single money transfer bundle to minimize detection. That was the last activity before she left the city.
The second we transfer any money, buy anything, message anyone, they'll be on our trail. So relax. We can't throw money at you, even if we wanted to.
Pris crosses her arms in front of her chest and fixes Anathian's eyes.
We want you to do the right thing.
Anathian returns Pris's gaze, and the two Sullivan kin stare at each other in silence. Everyone waits for Anathian to speak, but she also crosses her arms in front of her chest, keeping up her staring contest with Pris. The awkward silence makes everyone nervous, but no one dares to interrupt Anathian's game. Finally, Pris flinches her cheek and glances away for a split second. Anathian nods, but still keeps her eyes locked with her relative.
You're my blood, Pris.
She says.
I trust you.
Breaking her gaze, she turns to Raylan.
I figured there's a part for me in this story.
She sighs and opens her arm clip display.
So, what's her contact again?
She asks Everin, who quickly gets up to transfer Jepetia's contact from her arm clip.
Well, let's see if anyone's at home.
She says and taps the display. The rotating circle on the video call spins for a while, before the call closes automatically.
That's strange. Try this one.
Everin holds out her arm clip and transfers Pico's contact. Anathian connects, but again the call breaks off automatically.
Give it some time.
Anathian suggests.
Maybe they are busy. I'll try later.
She surveys the table and asks her guests.
Everybody full? Who wants another tikra? My supplies are still loaded.
Supplies.
Pris exclaims, smacking her hand on her forehead. She recalls all the supplies that are still in the Chirox.
I got a lot of good stuff in the car.
She says.
Let me go and get it real quick.
She gets up and quickly strides toward the front door. Everin spots her chance for a private talk and gets up from the table to follow Pris.
I'll help you.
She casually calls after her. Pris breaks her pace and nods in silence. She waits for Everin, opening the front door for her. Arya looks after them and sighs audibly as the door closes. Raylan taps her hand, comforting her worries for their old friend. Taryn and Saren also gaze in thought at the front door, feeling Pris's and Everin's unique history. As Anathian looks at the four young fugitives, she senses the tight fabric that keeps the group together, woven between each of them, connecting and keeping them apart, for reasons beyond Anathian's comprehension. As soon as the door closes behind Pris, she turns Everin around and embraces her tightly. Everin returns the hug with all her strength, holding on to Pris's familiar body and scent. They remain motionless for a while, cherishing the embrace. Pris gently caresses Everin's back and sighs.
I missed you so much.
I missed you too.
Everin breaks their embrace and rests her hands on Pris's shoulders.
Why didn't you let me know that you're back?
She asks softly.
I'm not mad at you, but
She smiles weakly.
I want to see our son. Corin.
Pris hesitates for a moment, realizing that her son also has a real Len mother and a Crow father. Caught between her affection for Everin and protecting her son, she nods confused.
I know, sweetie.
She responds.
And you will, as soon as this is over.
She promises, then quickly changes the subject.
He really likes Pico. They play together.
Pris smiles, recalling their joyful exchange at the toy store. Everin nods in response.
Yeah, Pico likes kids. And he also only has an Ama mother. Jepetia is also a single mother.
Pris senses Everin's longing to be a part of their son's life, but as much as Pris wants this to come true, her present concerns are far removed from thinking about wedding bells.
Listen, I've been raising my child alone. Because I chose to take on that responsibility.
She defends herself.
But why?
Everin asks desperately.
To protect our future? Yes. Corin told me about your reasons.
She says.
Well, guess what? Your protection didn't work. Look what became of us.
She says, growing agitated over Pris's stubborn decision and its repercussions.
Corin goes to war, and me?
Everin leaves the words hanging, unable to describe her own future.
That's not my fault.
Pris retorts, overhearing Everin's comment on Corin's fate. Brushing off Everin's accusation, she steps away into the bright morning sun.
Not your fault. It's totally your fault.
Everin blurts out, instantly regretting her words. Pris stares at her, suddenly realizing how deeply Everin has suffered because of her selfish decision.
Is it really me?
Pris searches her mind, willing to understand the causes of her guilt.
No, wait.
Everin says,
That's not right. I'm sorry, Pris.
taking Pris's hand in hers. She searches for words to explain her emotions.
It's just, I've been searching for you all this time to make things right.
She mutters.
To find you and bring us back together with Corin, to have our son by my side. But nothing worked. I couldn't find you.
Everin recalls her frantic online searches for Pris, neglecting Corin and his increasingly erratic behavior. She muses about her time in school.
If it weren't for Arya, Corin and I would have been goners by now.
Arya?
Pris is stunned, pointing her thumb at the front door.
The slut that tried to break up our triple?
You don't know her. She has changed. A lot.
Everin corrects Pris.
Without her, Corin would have never made it through school. She was his anchor when you were gone. I couldn't help him.
She finishes, breaking off as her memories overwhelm her. Pris gazes over the yard, watching a chicken pecking at grit in the shadow of her chiracs. Her view of Arya as a gold-digging, triple-destroying Amma takes a sudden turn. Pris's contempt for Arya as the trigger for her own life's choices shifts toward respect for Arya's actions.
Well, what do you know?
Pris says quietly, staring at the chicken that now cocks its head toward a tire, interested in its smooth black form. Everin watches Pris intently as she replies almost apologetically.
Yes, she's a fine Amma. I'm in a triple with her and Kyren Thompson, the Discord player.
Good for you. Good for you.
Pris says with a cheerful tone, downplaying the information that seems to cut another future out of her life. She starts walking toward her car, feeling alone and unwanted in this world. It seems that her son is the only constant in a world that keeps spinning faster and faster. Everin follows her and watches her open the trunk of the Chirox. The car sits in the bright sun, yet no sunlight reflects off its silhouette, giving the odd impression of a car-shaped shadow in space.
Have you contacted Corin?
Everin asks gently while Pris rummages in the trunk.
No, I never tried.
Pris replies.
I always wanted to come back when he made it into score, but
Pris puts a box aside and gazes at Everin.
have you?
She asks. Everin shakes her head silently, looking back at Anathian's house. They both know how Corin's Discord career crumbled, and they begin to understand that they abandoned him. After a moment, Everin remarks,
Arya's on Corin's family list. She sometimes gets a circular from him.
Really?
Pris is unsure if she should be jealous or comforted.
What's he doing now? Is he still in the city?
No, he's in the Navy,
Everin tells her.
stationed at the northern Verloren Strait.
She quietly adds.
He's in the war?
Pris calls out in disbelief, shocked about Corin's dangerous life. She lets go of a large box which hits the ground with a metallic thud. The chicken nervously scuttles away toward the shadow of the barn.
Arya also said he never comes back to the city, even when he's on leave.
Everin muses about her old friend and voices another possibility.
Maybe he found a new life.
Pris cannot accept that yet another part of her life has vanished into thin air. She angrily turns to Everin and calls out worriedly,
Len, it's dangerous up there.
He's street smart. He'll make it.
Everin replies confidently, trying to calm Pris down.
Let's hope so.
Pris sighs, returning to unload the trunk. She nervously laughs at a memory, trying to supplant her losing grip on her future.
You know, at first I had Corin Jr.'s stuff in here,
She chuckles.
and I always had to get out of the car to get to the trunk. until I put in that latch in the back seat.
Everyone understands Pris's confusion over the new revelations that add even more uncertainty to her life. Without pressing her about Corin's and her own life, she just acknowledges Pris's hardship.
Must have been hell's at first.
It was mostly the money.
Pris recalls.
I had a kid to feed, spent a fortune on Len milk in his first year. Anathayan helped me out a lot back then, and I still owe her.
With a staunch nod, she glances at her arm clip.
Just a little longer now and I'll set her up for life. And the rest of you.
No need.
Everin smiles.
Jeppy already gave me more than I can ever spend. If I ever survive this.
She adds, frowning at their chances.
Nice.
Pris agrees, taking a moment to realize that Jepedia added a really enticing incentive to succeed in their endeavor.
But all of our cash remains a dream if we cannot stop Winslow.
Everin reminds her. She wipes sweat off her brow. The heat begins to take hold of the day.
That's why Mama has bought some nice little surprises.
Pris grunts, handing Everin a large box. She hangs 2 large bags on Everin's shoulder and picks up 2 more boxes and bags herself.
Let's get this stuff inside, before it gets too hot.
I wonder what Pris bought this time. Nuclear hand grenades?
Why is everybody giving me shit for defending myself?